Good evening. Welcome to Beechwood Middle School. I am Linda Logalbo. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and I oversee the gifted programming in our district. We're very excited to host Dr. Sylvia Rimm tonight. I would like to thank or recognize our gifted teachers that are here tonight. So in front I have Kate Vitek. I have Rob Ristow in the back. I have Narissa Taub from Hilltop here tonight. And then we also have our board member, Josephine Chan, here tonight. I saw her earlier, there she is. And then our middle school principal, Dr. Shritai, is here tonight as well. And Elise Stowicki, our 7th grade teacher, is here tonight. So we have a good representation from the school district. I'm going to turn it over to Kate Vitek to do a brief introduction of Dr. Rimm. And again, if you have questions, you can write them on the note card and we will be collecting them for Dr. Rimm to answer.
Welcome everyone. This is such a great turnout. I'm so excited to see everyone. As Linda said, I'm the gifted coordinator for Beechwood City Schools, and I also work with some of your children here teaching honors 7th and 8th grade English language arts. We are so fortunate in Beechwood to have this incredibly supportive parent community, and our gifted team has been working on increasing engagement with parents and providing opportunities for all of you to connect with the schools. So to that aim, we had been talking about bringing in a speaker that we felt could speak to the nature and needs of your gifted children and also help you to foster their growth. And so that brought Dr. Sylvia Rimm right to the forefront for us. To be honest, I'm still a little bit starstruck that we managed to get her here. The gifted team is here and very excited about it. We have studied her research in our training and cited her in our own research. And when I became a mother for the first time, I turned back to her books again from a new perspective. I am constantly stunned by how relevant they remain as a teacher and as a mother. So we know that she has a lot of really valuable insights for you tonight. Dr. Rimm is a psychologist whose roles have included being the director of the Family Achievement Clinic here in Cleveland, as well as a clinical professor at Case Western Reserve School of Medicine. She has also counseled gifted children and their families at Menlo Park Academy. An extension of her counseling over the years has included a nationally syndicated parenting column, as well as appearances on public radio, in which she answered questions from parents from around the world. She has also been a contributing correspondent to NBC's Today Show for many years. All of this incredible work has made her a favorite personality with a national following. Finally, she is the author of many books on a range of related topics for your gifted children that you've seen out front. These include See Jane Win, Raising Preschoolers, Growing Up Too Fast, The Rimm Report on the Secret Lives of America's Middle Schoolers, Why Bright Kids Get Poor Grades, and my personal favorite, How to Parent So Children Will Learn. They are out here for purchase after the talk, and maybe even an autograph. Please help me welcome Dr. Sylvia Rimm.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming. We're also accustomed to looking at screens, that this is kind of a new experience for me. After years of having only full audiences, we've been using screens since COVID. And my topic, as you know, is parenting gifted children for achievement, fulfillment, and contribution. And I want to talk about all three of those because they're very important. And I also want to tell you that I started in the gifted field as a parent who knew that I had a child that was different and had no idea of what to do. And so many years ago, I joined a parent association and started working in Wisconsin, trying to get gifted education in Wisconsin because teachers just didn't know what it was. And it's so key. It's made such a difference in my life, and I've hopefully have made the difference in the lives of many kids. You may say, as you look at me, my goodness, she's an old lady and she's still working. I am an old lady and I'm still working, because I continue to make a difference. And at least every few months I hear from somebody that I saw 28 years ago or 14 years ago to let me know that they appreciate my help. So if I can keep helping people, I want to. I have only 2 questions, so you must know all the answers already of 3 questions. But I'll answer other questions at the end, but I want to be sure that I answer all your questions. And even if everyone has left and I have not answered your question, I want you to come to me and I want to be sure to answer it. I've been doing this for a long time and I so want to be helpful to you. Now, I may have a little trouble coordinating of the slides, but the how to parent so children will learn, if you're struggling with issues at home, will give you a simple format of, you'll quickly read through, and what I suggest is mother reads through first and checks things she wants to bring to father's attention, then fathers read through and make sure they look at the check marks and they add their own check marks, so mother can again look through and look for father's check marks, and that is whether or not you're living in the same household, because I know we also have families of divorce, and they too need to understand the importance of parents parenting together and respecting each other so kids can move forward. At any rate, the Why Bright Kids Get Poor Grades is the one you want to look at if your gifted children are underachieving and have a power of underachieving. And I just came back from a few months in Florida and I spoke to a group there, and there was a letter from somebody saying, I read your book, I have it, it really worked. So this is really practical stuff that teachers can understand and parents can understand. I'm still working at Family Achievement Clinic, and I'm still seeing kids, perfectionist girls and underachieving boys, and some boys who think they're not so gifted and when they really are. Or I'm seeing kids, boys who like science and like math, but they hate language. And then I have to convince them that if they're going to go to science and math, then they're going to do research and they're going to have to publish or perish, so they better learn to write too, even if it isn't their favorite. So they don't have to like all subjects equally, but they have to come to terms with recognizing that there are things that they don't know that they really will learn in school. And of course there are things that will be boring, that somehow they think will never be helpful, but they may think of 20 years from now and say, I remember when I learned that. And then there are other things they will forget. But the key issue is to learn as much as they can and to recognize it will make their life fuller and more important. Now, this generation has particular problems that the generation before didn't have. Every generation has new problems. COVID absolutely had an effect on our kids. COVID tuned kids into screens like never before, and they missed a lot of the socializing that would have been natural and now feels difficult. So we need to be sensitive to that issue. And some of them figure out if they could learn from a screen before, why shouldn't they learn from a screen now? And of course, social media is another issue that's become very difficult and has an effect on kids. And so I want to assure you that I would like you to stay in touch with screens and make sure that your kids are not taking their cell phones to bed. Whatever age they are, bedtime is when you put cell phones away, because I can't tell you how many of the underachieving kids I found that were staying up at night on social media or with friends instead of sleeping, and parents didn't even know they were awake. So please be sensitive to those things. I still continue to see children, and as I see children, I see their parents, I see the children themselves, and then we work together to help them achieve. And it works. and it's what I'm dedicated to because it really makes a difference. So now let me see what I have next on my program. I hope this works. Oh, wait a minute, whoops. Oh, sorry. We'll try again. Okay, so I'll start with Rimm's Law number 12, and there are only 12 of them. So I'm starting at the end. Rimm's Law number 12 says children will continue to achieve if they usually see the relationship between the learning process and its outcomes. That's what gifted education is actually all about. It's giving kids a place to find that if they make an effort, they can accomplish. And if they don't make an effort, they won't accomplish. But the curriculum has to be appropriate. And fortunately, you're in a school district like Beechwood that cares about gifted kids and adjusts curriculum to what they need. But that's not always the case. Sometimes you as parent will have to let a teacher know that your child does really know more than they're acting like they know, and could they adjust the curriculum. So you as parent need to be the communicator, because it's unlikely that a third grade or a second grade or a fourth grade child is going to go up to the teacher and say, "This is too easy for me." They're not going to say that. They might tell you that, but they won't tell the teacher. So you have to be the communicator when they're not being challenged, because if they don't do the work because they're bored, the teacher will assume they can't do the work and it's too difficult, and will give them easier work. And of course, if they don't do the work or care about the work, they won't do a job on tests either, so no one will know. Particularly if you come from a culturally different environment, or if you speak a different language at home, and that happens, and I just had some child that I worked with from China who won't even talk to the teacher in English, although she's very capable of doing it. So sometimes you have to be the communicator for kids who are not willing to tell the teacher about the problem. This is the way it looks, and this is the way we want it to look. Quadrant 1 shows you the ideal situation. When kids make good efforts, they have good outcomes most of the time. It doesn't have to be 100% of the time, but that's what achievement feels like. I did my math and it came out good. Doesn't mean it's 100, but it looks like it's really good. Not I did my math and it was too easy, or I did my math and I can't understand it. So the right difficulty level is important, and that means there has to be some early assessment for kids, and you probably have it in your schools as you begin. What you have for underachievement is no connection at all between effort and outcome. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, sometimes they fail, sometimes they are lucky and get a success. So they don't feel like they own achievement. Now, the traps that happen that get kids into quadrant 4, which is where we don't want them to be because they are definitely underachievements, are kids who put forth good effort, but the results are not good. That's in the quadrant 2, where it's too hard. In quadrant 3, you have no effort and they're getting all A's anyway. Either one of them run the kids into underachievement. So you're watching for that as you report to the teacher what your concerns are. And it is really important. I do have a drink here, and I was thinking, where's my water? But here's my tea. Just let me take a little sip. I'm sorry. It's just tea, it's not wine. But that's what gifted curriculum is supposed to be like. So where there's much more to gifted than just curriculum, but for starters, to get the feel of what we're looking for. Now I want to talk about power, and that's extremely important, and it's important for all kids, but it's especially important for gifted kids. So I talk about raising your kids with a V of love. That means when they're 4, you don't ask them what they want to do, you tell them what you want them to do. We don't tell them to find their passions and decide what they like to eat. You tell them what to do when they're little kids. The V of love says when they're young, they're down at the bottom of the V with very few choices and very few opinions and decisions. They're just little kids, and you're supposed to lead them. And then as they get older, you give them more choices and more choices and more choices and more choices until adulthood, you give them full independence. Now, if you do it the other way, and unfortunately, the inverted V is what I see a lot. If you ask them all the time what they want to do, you're giving them power without the knowledge of what's good for them. So what I want you to do is have more confidence that you know what's good for your kids. And if it's hard, they can tell you. If they don't like it, they can tell you. But if you say it like you mean it, they'll do it and they'll learn it. And if you ask them, they will say no or yes, depending on what they feel like. They really don't have any idea. When you say find their passions, that must be run around and play. Or maybe not. Maybe it's read all the time and do nothing else. But they're not old enough. When they sit down to a meal, you don't say, do you want peas? You put the peas on the plate because it's a green vegetable and they want to have it. And if you get into the habit, and I see this a lot, so it's really a problem. If you get in the habit of asking them, they get all the power and they expect to have more power. They expect to have more power than their parents. And even if their IQ is higher than yours, they are not smarter than you. Do not be intimidated by a high IQ score. They're still little kids, and you know what's best for them. That doesn't mean they can't have any choices. But if you give them too much power, you will find you have a lawyer child. A lawyer child is a child who argues all the time. Anytime you tell them, they argue. And pretty soon you're arguing back and forth. And you're wondering, how did this happen? How did this happen? As they manipulate the adults in their life without any idea of what's going to help them or be right for them. They do it happily because it gives them power. And those children, that are in charge of their parents may look happy, but they will not be happy. They will not feel secure. They will not feel confident because they have to live in the real world where they can't necessarily run everyone's life. And they'll thank you very much if you let them understand that there are some things they can't do. But you can be very positive if you do it that way. If you give them too much power, you'll find you're saying no, 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 and they'll be saying, my parents are so negative. And you'll wonder, how did I get so negative with my kids? It doesn't have to be that way. You can turn that negativity into positivity, and when they're very little, a little thing that I do for the kindergartners that come to our school, and some of them want to run the school, is we teach them to play Simon Says. You know that game, Simon Says? And then, when it's time for them to do something and they haven't done it the first time, you simply say, Simon says eat your dinner, and they know what you're talking about. So it gives them a little sense of what's supposed to happen in a good-humored, nice way. But don't let them run the family. They don't know what's best for them, even if they think they do. And let them know that you have the confidence and you know how to parent them, and you'll help them, and they'll be happy because of what you teach them. And happy is what we want them to be eventually, happy and healthy. And the name that goes with that is, if children were meant to run our homes, God would have created them bigger. So with gifted kids, and I think in our generation more than ever, they can get too much of a good thing. There was a time where there was one child born after another, and families had 8 kids and 10 kids. That doesn't happen very much. People get their careers going, they wait a long time to get married, and sometimes there's one child, which is the most difficult, incidentally, for raising, or 2 children or 3 children. So if you have a child that seems to talk very early and is very smart or reads very early, it's very easy for them to collect huge compliments, things like genius, oh, you're brilliant, oh my goodness, you're so smart, you must be the smartest kid in the world. And that's not exactly a message you want to give them, even if they're very, very gifted, because what you're doing is setting them up for very highly competitive pressure. They're thinking that that's what they have to be to please you. They have to be best. I'll give you an example. A young man that another counselor in my clinic worked with a long time ago, always got all A's, all A's, all A's, all A's, easily. He was a gifted kid. He got up to high school, and in his senior year in high school, he wanted to take a course that he didn't have the preparation course for, and it was a very difficult chemistry class. And because he was such a good student, they said, okay, give it a try. And he got a C, and he attempted suicide. He did not die, fortunately. But for a kid who never, ever got anything but an A, easily, that was a terrible shock. And I mean, no one would have expected that. But that's what he earned. He did not have the background. Someone should have prepared him for, instead of saying, oh, you can do everything, this is going to be hard for you. So that allowing him to be hard. And it was, a mistake, and the kid went on, he was fine and successful, and he survived, and I don't know what happened to him years later, but I'm sure he was fine. So it's just the expectation that you will always do things perfectly is a difficult thing for kids to live with. They can't, no matter how smart they are. And actually, for those of you who haven't, I don't have any CJ Wynn books here to sell because they're all out, but that was the book that I did research on, the childhoods of successful women, and I was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and it was a bestseller book. What was most interesting about that book is successful women lost a lot of times. They gave up for briefly and started again. They didn't quit. The key was resilience. It really was. And kids don't understand that you can't be successful all the time, no matter how hard you try. But of course, part of a gifted program is to give kids challenge as they go along, so that the first time they get a B is not a senior year in high school or the first year in college or the first year on the job. They have challenge even when they're younger. So if they make a mistake, they correct it. They get used to that. So being sure that your kids are challenged in school is a responsibility that both parents and teachers have. But teachers have 25, 30 kids in a class. So if you're the parent and you see that your child isn't challenged, your child may not want to go up to the teacher and say this is too easy, but you can go up to the teacher and explain that he needs more challenge or she needs more challenge, so that they're not getting perfect grades on everything, and that they understand they don't have to be perfect all the time. So when you have your first child, they often get a lot of attention, and they do indeed feel like kings or queens on a throne. And then, of course, if they have a second child, we have a dethroning, and that can be a problem. Now, the research tells us that first children actually, and only children, actually take on more leadership in later life. So it's not all bad. But I know as I work with parents, it's not all easy either, because once they become accustomed to being number one, it's hard for them to accept number two. So the second children have an easier time, in a sense, than the first child, because the first child is kind of being dethroned. The second child is now getting attention. And of course, you want to try to be careful to help them both understand that they can be brothers or sisters and help each other, and and how to do that will be very important to their lives. So there's that gifted kid who got all that praise, who now gets in the class, and I can tell you, for years I've seen kids like that. Their hand is always up, and they're always talking. They always have something to say, and somebody else gets their hand up, and they've got their hand up over them. And just talking to that kid a little bit, saying, you know, it's all right for you to raise your hand, and it's all right for you to answer the question, but other kids have to get a chance too, because they have to answer the question. So and if you want this to stop, it's not scolding or punishment, it's help letting them know that. So for example, if they're jumping out of their chairs and making noise, you can set up something with the teacher where if they don't jump up and make noise or just raise their hand gently when they have something to say, you know, they get a star that day. And all it takes is, you know, remembering get 5 stars or 10 stars, and they get a little reward, and they get over the problem. It doesn't have to become a major problem. But learning to share attention is important to learn all the way along, and you can help them in very gentle ways, carefully as either parent or teacher, to change that so they don't feel like they have to have attention all the time. The other one is the one that typically belongs to boys. Sometimes it's the girls too, but the rushing through their work just to be the first one done is something that often happens. And it's okay if they rush through the work and they do it well, but if they rush through work and just to get it done and they make mistakes, that causes a problem, and you can help them with that. There's another group of kids, and there are lots of these, who have a great deal of the problem doing timed work, timed math facts particularly. So if there's the one group that rushes through their work that you want them to slow down and do it more carefully. There's another group that you want them to do it faster, and you don't want to put pressure on them. So what you want to do with those kids is you do a little work at home. You say, take the same math facts page, and they do it 5 days in a row, and they time it themselves and just try to beat their own time and still get it right. And since they're doing easier work, but they're just practicing for speed, they'll get it right. And then little by little, they'll get faster and become accustomed to the time tests. Now, I have to tell you, there are some kids who never become accustomed to time tests. And for those kids who get so anxious during timing, I usually write a note to the school and ask if they can have extra time for their work. And their work improves very dramatically. If I had my wish, I would get rid of time tests entirely, because they do teach anxiety, which gifted kids seem to have too much of already. So just some suggestions. Now the perfect, usually perfect girls. Sometimes we have perfectionist boys too, but we have a lot of perfectionist girls. And we really have to help them to deal with learning brainstorming to get ideas, because they can't get the perfect idea. And you know how to brainstorm, right? Where you just think of a lot of different ideas. They have to write a story and they can't come up with something. I remember when I did it, I had to write something on the slave trade from Africa, and this was in 8th grade, and I was so frustrated. I couldn't come up with what I wanted to write. I couldn't come up with what I would write, and finally I said to myself, I'll pretend I'm coming over on a ship as a slave and write a story that way. And I wrote the story that way, and I read it to the class, and there was sudden silence. But it took that brainstorming to get something going, and teaching kids how to do that, to brainstorm ideas, to think of, 10 or 20 different things, and then pull something out and combine it so that they can do their best job. But even a perfect job, even the perfect job, makes you feel even more perfectionistic. So you always have to keep reminding kids that they're not always going to be successful, but if they persevere, they're going to be successful in the long run, because they'll overcome one thing and try something else. And that is so, so important. We've seen many, many girls who, you know, get to a place sometimes in middle school, they're perfect right up till middle school, and then they start to get B's or C's, and it's all social life. They give up on all school and say, I'm not so smart, and they're all done, and they never get that turned around. So it really is important to mark that and help them understand that you, as parents, have had failure experiences too, but you didn't quit, you didn't give up. And that's part of success. Whether you're mom or dad or a kid, you're going to not always be successful, but you don't quit, then you will have a good career and as good a life if you stay healthy, of course. We can't control everything. Then Rimm's Law number 1 is the one that I like to give the first priority. It's so important. Children are more likely to be achievers if their parents join together to give the same clear and positive message about school effort and expectations. Whoops, I'm sorry, I'm not used to this clicker. I got to get it back. And this is the corollary of that law. Rimm's Law number 9, children become oppositional defiant. If one adult allies with them against a parent or a teacher, making them more powerful than an adult. One of the first questions I ask kids when I see them is, who's easier on you, your mom or your dad? And almost always they'll pick one of them. Now, not always. Sometimes they'll say they're the same. And then I can figure out what's going on and how they're getting the power to avoid what they're doing. If one parent is easier on them and making the other parent into the kind of ogre or the bad parent, the kid can escape, and with the help of the caring, easy parent. Both parents care, but they don't realize that that difference is giving the child the wrong kind of power and the wrong kind of signal, and it becomes an oppositional, defiant child and a difficult child, and it's a balancing act. You didn't marry someone who was the same as you. You married someone, hopefully, who is a good balance for you, and sometimes you'll do some things your way or their way, and you may have to compromise. But when it comes to the kids, you don't say yes to something mommy said no to, and you don't say no to something mommy said yes to. If you're not sure how you feel about it, you simply say to the kids, Mom and Dad will talk about it and we'll get back to you. And when they see that, they understand it's all right to have differences, but you want to talk it over. And if they don't, they will manipulate you, and they will become very powerful and very rebellious, and it'll be very difficult. So this is a real lesson that will be very, very helpful to you. You don't have to be perfect parents. So if you slip up once in a while, it's okay. That's normal. You're not always going to be on the same page. But if most of the time the kids figure out you're going to talk things over and decide what yes or no, what they can do, then they will go forward. Becomes obviously much more difficult after a divorce, but it's still doable. It's still doable even if parents are divorced, for them to be on the same page for their kids so that they can guide them for the sake of the kids. And I can tell you that doesn't always work out, but hopefully you go for that. And if you can't, you get counseling to help, because it's obviously more complicated with more kids and more families and more differences. And then, of course, there can be grandma, too, who lets kids out of things. If you have an easy, loving grandma who doesn't like to say no, it's very easy for the kids to get power over their parents. So at my age, if anybody's around here, just know you have to support your kids. Check with them first. And the most important is, I ask you please to support your children's teachers. And if you say things that are negative about their teachers, they will not behave in school and they will not respect teachers. You need to let them know that their teachers really care about teaching them and they should be learning in school. If you have a difference with the teacher, you can have a teacher conference and talk it over. And you may, after you talk it over with the teacher, see, the kid is just manipulating you. But it may be that the teacher might see your child differently too, and that may help the teacher to figure out how to help the child. But respect for teachers is extremely important in your child's life. As a matter of fact, if you thank a teacher, and all of you can thank a teacher, I always thank Ms. Schubert. She was very special. In 4th grade, she taught us about the national parks and the love of nature. And not only that, she gave Joan Fishkoff and me some extra work in a hard workbook. And we went over to her and said, Ms. Schubert, this is really very hard work. She said, that's okay, just keep working, you'll figure it out. It was the first time I experienced challenge. It wasn't called a gifted program, but at least she knew that I needed more challenge. So thank you, Ms. Schubert. And so they too can make a difference, although she can't hear me say thank you, and I don't know if I thanked her then. She was my favorite teacher. This is the way underachievement looks, and I think as I describe it, you may see some children you know, hopefully not your own, or maybe you'll just see them all in the inner circle. The kids in the inner circle have basically learned to deal with competition and learn to do hard work. They're willing to work hard at something. Those are the key things. Learning to deal with competition, learning to work a little harder. If they learn that, they will achieve. And the competition is a tricky one. Now, the kids outside of that inner circle are using defense mechanisms in a regular way, not just a once in a while way. And so some are less harm than others. And so the ones that might be underachievers, or might be like social Chandra, and that's supposed to be Jock Jack. Yeah, the K is not on there, but Jock Jack. Those are kids who are in leadership. They're doing really great things, but they haven't learned to do things where they're not leading. So they only do things in that area, and they haven't learned to deal with losing. So it doesn't mean they can't be social, but these are kids who, social is everything. Sports are everything. And so I tell every kid to take a sport. It's so important. But if you're really, really good at sports, and it's the only thing you're good at, and you don't do your schoolwork, you might be kind of shocked when you get out to sports in college when you're just average or below average and you haven't done your schoolwork for years. So that's what I mean by that kind of dominant conformer. Academic Alice is the same. She could be that all-A student, or that boy that I told you about who never experienced real challenge, who never saw a B, who never had anything that felt hard. And so when she gets to that place where she hasn't experienced it, she just doesn't know what to do. And the same thing with Dramatic Dan, except he's the one who wants to go to Broadway right after high school and thinks he's going to be a star in the movies or something. And he's in the play, but he's not doing his work. So those are examples of kids who are at risk of becoming underachievers, even though they appear to be doing so well. Now, the more conforming high achievers that are at risk would be perfectionist Pearl, that I've already told you about, as soon as she can't do it perfectly. And I said she, it could be a boy too, but mostly the girls get that perfectionism. And poor Polly, who feels sorry for herself all the time and gets attention. Oh, this is so hard. This is too hard for me. And everybody feels sorry for her, and she just doesn't do her work. And passive Paul, who is expressionless and doesn't do his work. So the bottom groups are the dependent nonconformers, and these are the more difficult ones. And after I get done, I'm going to tell you how you respond to each group. So the dependent nonconforming kids are the kids who are taunted and teased, or sick and stay out of school and don't come to school on time, and or depressed, and people don't know what to do about it, and they just stay that way, and they don't get success experiences. And the last group are the most difficult, probably rebellious Rebecca. That doesn't usually happen until middle school or high school, or Bully Bob, or Torn Thomas, who's torn between two marriages, or Creative Chris. The Creative Chris is a very interesting one because actually a lot of my work is in the area of creativity. And Creative Chris is the kid is, you tell him something and he thinks, how can that be different? And so he gets into his creativity, and it's really creative, but it doesn't fulfill the requirements. And you can see that that causes a little problem in school, sometimes behavior problems too. So for those kids outside of the circle, what you want to respond is counterintuitively. So your intuition for the dependent is to feel sorry for them. You can't do that. You have to say, no, you have to move forward. And so what they're asking for, you have to think about and say in small steps, you can do this. You think you can't do this, but you can. And if you give them too much attention to their tears and their depression, they become more tearful and more depressed. And that's very hard to do as a parent, but it can be done in small steps. And when you do that, they emerge from these underachieving categories in positive ways. In the same thing as a social Chandra, you can tell her, yes, you can have social life, but that's not enough. Incidentally, in my C. Jane Wynne book, the people who were most social as kids were the ones who went into politics, because that's the naturals. They were president of their class and they're running for Senate. So it's not all bad. But you can understand that if they're underachieving and not doing their work, that will not help them. So you're trying to counterintuitively respond to those dependent kids and teach them step by step to more be independent. So for the kids, for those kids who are not doing sports, you want to get them to do sports so they can learn to win and lose and understand what competition is about. It doesn't mean they have to be professional sports people, but it means they have to, and the clubs you have in your school are very, very important. Your middle school clubs, your high school clubs, these give kids an opportunity to really search out new fields where they can figure out what they can do, and they've been helpful. And I'll answer specific questions about these kids after we get done, but I think we're almost running out of time and I've got to move fast. So on we go. I'm going to skip a few things. So here's strategies for students with passions and highly competitive careers. That's things like the artists we have in our classes who are really talented, the musicians who are really talented, who are saying things, but this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, so that's the only thing I'm going to do. So these are some suggestions for those, and this is more related to some of the older kids, of course, but so my first one with the passion is practice the passion area so you can better determine your talent. I don't tell them to quit the art. I don't tell them they're not going to make any money as an artist, so they should never do it. I tell them to continue to do it, and that says music or sports too. The second one, alternative. Maintain alternative skills in case passion doesn't work out. So they still have to do their math. They still have to do their writing. Strive to win in competitions and join collaborations to compare your talent. Get those artists out there competing in art shows and then getting them working with other artists as well. Skills, select coaches to teach the high-level skills. You need to find the right teachers for them to keep them going. And install a deadline for rethinking their career directions. Obviously, this is much more directed toward older kids like middle school and high school. And if opportunities are not realistic, select the alternative direction and never stop enjoying your passion, but make it into your hobby. It's pretty interesting. I have a son-in-law who has just retired as a neurosurgeon, and he's had a great career, and he's doing art. And he always did art I didn't know about. But now, everywhere we go, he brings his paints and he's doing art. Whoever knew that a neurosurgeon could do art? probably as a kid, he did a lot of art. But it's just an example of a way to deal with a talent that obviously he wouldn't have become an artist, but at least he's enjoying the art. Let's see. Strategies with students with no specific interest. This is really important. There are some kids that just don't seem to have any interests. Interests are very important. They can guide you. Negotiate time to examine interests thoroughly. Test new activities with friends. Try new friends as well. Explore many extracurricular activities. Let the kids know about the extracurricular activities in your school. They're so important to their finding new talents. Raise grades. Work hard on school subjects to raise grades. Experiment with part-time and volunteer jobs. Even by middle school, kids can start having jobs, part-time jobs, sometimes taking care of younger children, sometimes teaching younger children who need some help, sometimes teaching kids sports. There are all kinds of ways that they can get that increased responsibility that gives them a sense of confidence, because these kids tend to have very little confidence. Spot mentors and observe what others do. You can assign them to a mentor, an adult that does the same thing. Tutor young students to build confidence and serendipity. Keep them alert to serendipitous events or meetings that can lead to opportunity. I'm telling you that because kids, I see that happen with kids. Someone who doesn't know what to do with anything and then just happens to join Boy Scouts. I mean, you wouldn't think that Boy Scouts would make that kind of difference. They say, oh, I love it. I love camping. I love this. I love outdoors. I love nature. You know, suddenly there's enthusiasm. And you want kids to feel that enthusiasm for something, even though it doesn't have to be their favorites forever. And my top 10 advice for gifted students, I want to just see, yeah, I'm getting close to the end. I want to leave time for questions. I think I should stop now. Wait a minute, I'll end and I'll ask questions. You're a role model to your kids and they're watching you. So if you love your job and if you're doing something interesting, tell them about it. Don't be negative about your own work, because if you are, they will be negative about their own work. And they are watching you. Do activities. Here, I'll end this and then I can get to the questions. Bear in mind, notice the year, 1934. That's a long time ago, before I was born. Bear in mind that the wonderful things you learn in your schools are the work of many generations. All this is put in your hands as your inheritance in order that you may receive it, honor it, add to it, and one day faithfully hand it on to your children. I just think that's a good message for every kid to read and recognize that they can make a contribution. They can find what they can do. If they're gifted and they are capable, we want them to use those gifts. We want them to understand that they will not always be excited about what they'll do. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's very challenging, even in a job that you love. It's not that when you're doing something, you're always passionate about it and it's always easy. It's sometimes very hard. But when you can combine that love with the hard work, then you really can make the world a little better place. And you can pass that on to your children and talk about your spouse when he or she accomplishes, how proud you are of them, how proud they are of you, and how proud you are as your children accomplish and contribute and make their small differences. Let them learn to help others as well. Now I'm ready for questions. So I have one that I haven't looked at here. What is your advice? Somebody bring your questions up. Good. What is your advice for kids who are special and gifted, interested in math and technology, but not reading and science? How can we help them? I think I kind of addressed that. So what you want to tell them is it's all right for them to do better in those subjects they love more, but the other subjects may be important in their careers as well. So they don't have to do all A's, but they should do good work. The other thing will happen is at some point they may need scholarships to get into a school, or they may need high grades just to be accepted into a school. So if they let those subjects that they don't like go down too much, then they'll lose opportunities. And so sometimes you just have to explain, in all work, it's not all stuff we love. There's always part of that we don't like. Now, what suggestions do you have for parents of gifted kids who disengage and put in minimal effort when bored, under challenged? Okay, so then we have kids here, I think, so they might give appearance to the teacher that they're not ready for more than they are. Well, it becomes very important for you to have a conference with the teacher and tell the teacher that the child can do more than that. But it also is important for you to continue having that child learn at home. So you as parent can be a teacher just developing their interests in something and persevering. And there's nothing wrong with teaching your kid to work hard at something that's not fun. Our kids were brought up on a farm, and they made hay. And they carried big bales of hay. And there was a big joke about all that hard work. And they planted trees, and they did hard work, and it wasn't easy. But if they were doing it with their father or their mother, and we were joking and having a good time together while we were doing the work, then the work worked well. So you too can do that. You don't have to make hay. You can go biking, you can go hiking, you can take a walk, you can cook something together. But while you're doing it, you have to inspire them to work hard, because they'll be happier if they work hard. They can't build confidence if they don't work hard. You cannot deliver self-confidence without getting them to work hard. Confidence comes from accomplishing something that you didn't think you could accomplish. If it's all easy, then you think, oh, I haven't had to work at anything, and you expect not to have to work at anything. My kids identified as gifted, will he lose his giftedness over time? Please explain this situation. My son feels the other kids have hard time to understand him. Okay, he will lose his giftedness in time. He's still going to be smart, but he will not learn the basic stuff, so he won't be able to do the hard stuff. So it's just, if you could just become a mathematician without learning the math facts, it'd be one thing, but you first have to learn math facts before you do higher level math. And that's the way it is in everything. So if you're just smart and you don't use it, you lose it. That's just what happens. And you might be intelligent in some ways, but you lose the opportunities. How to parent a gifted child with ADHD. It's really important to identify the ADHD and use the appropriate medication. It makes a huge difference for the child. And over and over again, we've helped ADHD kids, and it's just like day and night when you get the proper medication, and they may need it their whole life, and sometimes they outgrow it. But there really it's a biological problem, and it is correctable. So, and there are plenty of gifted kids who are ADHD, and so you don't want to miss that. Do you know if your call-in radio show is syndicated or recorded anywhere? If you haven't already, can you talk about the social skills difficulties that many gifted kids experience? Oh, those are such good questions. The radio show doesn't exist anymore. I love doing it, and that wasn't a good question. I just don't have an answer. I do have to tell you that my radio show reached so many people, and there's an adult attorney that I met one day, and he said, "You just don't know how important it was to hear your radio show. I realized that I was normal." I thought there was something wrong with me, and here he was, a very successful attorney, but he thought he was so different, but really was very gifted. The social skills difficulties that many gifted kids experience really don't have to happen. We do social skills programs in our gifted program. We have lunch bunch and just talking about how you get along, how you make a friend. Those things can happen in gifted programming. I don't know if you have them in your gifted programming, but we do that, and we Kids just they don't have to think of having to be popular. They just do need to have some friends and recognize that they won't get along with everybody in the world, but they will get along. They have to find people who share their interests. So it's not always in the gifted range. It might be some running track that they share the interest with, but they get to meet with somebody and be with somebody. And the social skills are very, very important. And we try to emphasize that in gifted education. How can parents balance encouraging kids to be challenged to reach their potential without stressing them out too much? Well, the key thing is to emphasize the work, not the grade. If you do hard work, we'll be happy with you. Just do your work and concentrate. And you want to have fun too? We're going to make sure we have fun too. We want really to have a good life. And you don't have to be the valedictorian of the school. You just can be one of the gifted kids, and that'll be just fine. And so that they don't feel like they have to be number one or number two, because among gifted kids, they're also smart. There's no real way. I mean, 1 B- will make a difference. But we want you to work hard and do the best you can. And that won't be stressing if you just do what you're expected to do. And then make sure there's fun in the family, if you're having some fun in the family. Now, the hardest time with the stressing out will come in high school, because high schools today really are much more challenging than they used to be. You're taking college classes in high school. If you are worried about the stressing out in high school, just understand what these kids are much more prepared for college. In our day, when high school was easy, kids would drop out of college like flies. They'd come in, they were just overwhelmed. The kids who take the college classes while they're in high school or AP classes, they go into college, they're used to it. They don't drop out, and you can tell them that. So try not to have them add too many classes so they won't feel too much pressure. But high schools today are really challenging, and they have a good place for helping kids adjust. How do you regain balance of power when the V is upside down and they treat things as you ask them of them as optional? You rephrase things positively instead of negatively. Instead of always getting at them, you say, well, I need some help. Please help me set the table. Please help me clear up things. Thanks very much for your help. When you help, it makes such a difference in my life. That's the kind of thing. When you study, it really is good for you. So you're not always negative about that. Instead, you notice when they do things positive, but not extremely. So the work effort, not the A+, are the key thing. Are they making an effort? And those kinds of words can really make a difference. And usually, when I see kids like this in the clinic, it doesn't take much to turn around your language. It's just that you've been doing so many negative things that they feel like it's constant war. It's easier than you believe. Look at the How to Parent book. It'll really help you with that, or the underachievement book if your child is underachieving. And you'll see it over and over again. People have told me that's changed their children's lives. I wouldn't tell you otherwise, and it's not going to make a difference in my fortune. So I just want you to have something that really will help you. Is that the end now? So can I let you go? Can I just maybe end on a note? There was one more question. I won't be able to hear you. It'll have to be in writing. I'm sorry. Could you get it for me?
There was a slide on 10 advices.
I wear 2 hearing aids. I can't even hear you over here.
They're asking if you can go back to the slide on the top 10 advices for the parenting, just to show.
Okay.
I think they wanted to see that one.
Which one? Tell me when to stop.
That one.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is there a special one you want to talk about? Oh, you're going to take a picture. That's great. Feel free to.
yeah, then they can read that. Their kids can read it. And if they don't pick up everything, maybe they'll pick up one or two things and get started on that. And once they feel like something helps, then they take more. And, you know, it's been such a pleasure to reverse the underachievement of so many kids and see, help the parents and see the success. I tell you, I have had the most amazing career I could possibly have imagined. Just know, my parents were immigrants to this country. I'm a first-generation American. I absolutely lived the American dream. When I got out of high school, I never thought of even going to college. My guidance counselor said, Sylvia, you can go to college. I said, I don't have the money to go to college. She said, I'll tell you where you get the scholarships. And so I went to college. And there I saw a whole other world. I was afraid to talk to people, I was so dumb. I was afraid I couldn't do anything. But I found such a wonderful career to help others. You know, it's what this country is all about. So you too can reach out and help others and live the American dream. Every single American can. We just don't go to war. Thank you.